If everyone would please take your seats, we can begin. I know it's difficult at an occasion like this. So welcome everybody to this new lecture from the Weinreich Fellowship Program of the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research. I'm Jonathan Brent, and Executive Director of YIVO. It's a real pleasure to welcome all of you, and I imagine that many of you are former Boiberik campers. I'm not going to ask you to stand up, but I do understand that this is a very meaningful event for many of you, and I saw something this afternoon that I had never seen before. Our archive is vast. We have 23 million documents and books and all kinds of things in our archive, but today I saw the golden book of the Boiberik camp. And I know there is some talk of digitization and of making it available. Okay. We always function at YIVO in a state of urgency, some sort of emergency. In any case, what I was saying about the Golden Book is that it should be digitized. It needs to be preserved. It is one of the most, if those of you who haven't seen it, I invite you to come and see it, because you will really feast your eyes on one of the most beautiful objects in our archive, a real testament to the spirit of the camp, to those who were there, to the campers. And in any case, I think it's quite an amazing document, and we're hoping to raise the money to digitize this work. Right now, we have a lecture on creating songs in Boiberik, singing peace at Felker Yontev, by Eléonore Biezunski, a doctoral student at the School for Higher Studies and the Social Sciences in Paris. Ms. Biezunski is YIVO's Max Weinreich Joseph Kremen Memorial Fellow in East European Jewish Music, Theater and Arts 2014 and 15. And I want particularly to acknowledge and to thank publicly Ruth Kremen, who is here with us today. And Ruth, I won't ask you to stand up either, but I do want everyone to know of Ruth's generosity and the importance of these fellowships. And I don't want to delay the introduction too much, but I do want to say something about the importance of these fellowships. They are not simply gestures toward a nostalgic past with the hope of keeping the spirit alive. Yesterday, we had a meeting at YIVO about the future of education, not just at YIVO, but within the Jewish world. And Rachmiel Peltz, who is here with us today, pointed out something that I think has really staggering importance for the entire Jewish world, which is that the number of young people who can read these languages, Yiddish, Polish, Russian, German, is dwindling. But what's dwindling faster is the people who can read the handwriting. And what's dwindling faster than that is the people who can make sense of these materials. And our materials are almost overwhelmingly in these languages. And we are in danger as a people of losing our past. Because if people can't read these things, we cannot transmit a knowledge of the past to a future generation. And I am not simply speaking in cliches. It is a concrete reality that we're being faced with in an immediate way. And so these fellowships that enable young people to come into our archive, and not just come into our archive, but work with people like Marek Webb and Fruma Moore and Lyudmila Sholokhova and the other archivists, Leo Greenbaum and the other archivists in the YIVO archive, to gain the experience, to learn from them how to make sense of the language, which is often baffling because, as you know, Yiddish was not just one language, it was many. And there were many dialects, and there were many things that were never written down. And to encounter these oddities and eccentricities and complexities in the documents requires a guiding hand. And the YIVO Institute provides this, and it is the only institution really in the world that does so. And so we are especially grateful for the generosity of people like Ruth Kremen, who make it possible for young people to come here and study. If you enjoy our programs, please become a member of YIVO. There is material out there that will help you do so. If you have access to a computer, it's rather simple. If you don't, I suggest you get in touch with Leah or Alex or Suzanne Leon or myself, and we will guide you through the process as expeditiously as possible. We are a member organization, and our activities are made possible through membership. We rely on your support and to continue our work. We are also seeking volunteers, those of you who have the knowledge of the languages, those of you who can read the handwriting and who can contribute. Please feel free to be in touch with me or any one of the YIVO staff who is here today, and just say what it is you might like to do. We have now, I think, 12 or so volunteers in the archives and 2 or 3 in the library, and someone is even volunteering now in the development department. And it's a pleasure to have volunteers, and they are essential to our work. YIVO started as a volunteer organization. And for more information, please go to our website, which is easily found on the internet as yivo.org. Now it's my pleasure to introduce one of our young scholars who has on her shoulders so much of the weight of Jewish history in the form of Camp Boiberik. Eléonore Biezunski is a PhD candidate at the School for Higher Studies and Social Studies in Paris. She studies new Yiddish music. She is assistant director of the European Institute for Jewish Music in Paris and has taken part in several research projects, including at the Sciences Po Paris and the Agence Nationale de la Recherche. She has received support from the Fondation pour la Mémoire de la Shoah Foundation, Alice et Fernand Halphen, Commission de la something or other. The rest is in French. If it were in Yiddish, it would actually be easier. Biezunski is also a Yiddish singer and violinist. She performs in Europe and the United States with her bands, including the Klezmographers, with Pete Rushevsky in New York and Spilkes in Paris. I would like to see that. She has also worked as a musician on several theater productions and has recently created a new concert which features Yiddish songs and klezmer music from various folklore collections, including the Ruth Rubin archives, which are held here at YIVO. This Sunday at 2 p.m., Eléonore and others will perform a unique concert of French and Yiddish music at YIVO, so please join us here for this as well. It will be a wonderful event. And now, Eléonore, please, it's a pleasure to have you tonight.
Thank you, Jonathan Brandt, and thank you to all of you for being here. I didn't know that Boiberik was such a hip topic, but it's wonderful to have such a crowd. So first, I would like to express all my gratitude to Ruth Kremen for funding the Joseph Kremen Fellowship, which gives me the opportunity to conduct this research. I also would like to thank Leah Falk, Elena Guindy, and Jennifer Young for inviting me and organizing this lecture, as well as all the other amazing programs at YIVO. Sorry. And also thank Kristia Fischer, Leo Greenbaum, Fruma Morer, and Lawrence Klamberg for their help in the YIVO archives. I also would like to mention the work of Itzik Gottesman, who arranged the 415 boxes, no, not boxes, files contained in the 11 boxes of the Boiberik archives. From these 415 files, I was able to look at a little more than the half of it, especially from the founding years of the camp at the turn of the 1920s, until the beginning of the 1950s, up to when I was able to confront with oral histories. So I'm glad to be able to share this ongoing research, and I feel very lucky as an historian to be able to go back and forth between exploring archival material and conversing with real people who personally experienced and are so passionate about Boiberik. So I want to thank particularly those who gave me their time, and more than their time, with interviews, naming Marsha and David Gildin, Itzik Gottesman, and Joshua Waletzky. Thank you. Whose grandfather was among the founders of the camp, whose father was a camp there, and who himself was a camper and a music counselor for 8 years. In October 2014, I had the opportunity to present some of this material at the international conference, Jewish Music and Jewish Identity, at Youngstown University, Ohio, with a travel grant from the Jewish Music Forum. Before I really dive into the matter, I would like to explain how I became interested in music making at Camp Boiberik. I graduated in Nanterre University in geography and presented 2 master's theses, as it is required in France. The first was a study of spatial dynamics of klezmer music as an urban immigrant music in New York City, and was also supported by a YIVO fellowship. Then I researched how New York has been experienced and represented through the songs, through Yiddish songs. This research about music, migrations, and representations led me to an academic migration from geography to history, led by the love for Yiddish language and culture, although my methodology still draws from a more ethnographic type of research practice based on fieldwork and interviews, and focuses on music, using tools and concepts from ethnomusicology and performance studies, while my questions are still very much influenced by my training in cultural geography. My current doctoral research focuses on contemporary musical creation in Yiddish. So as I talked with Itzik Gottesman, renowned and beloved folklorist and former camper at Boiberik, and then with Joshua Waletzky, whom most of you know, and who I will speak more about soon, it became clear that I needed to dig further into the roots of American Jewish secular culture and movements to understand what was lying under the contemporary creation in Yiddish songs. So now I would like to play a field recording from the Friedman Sound Archives at Penn Libraries, from a tape compiled by Michael Hurwitz. And please feel free to sing along, since it might bring some memories back to a lot of you. Thank you. Oops. Thank you. It's very moving, actually, to see such enthusiasm. And so for almost 60 years, starting from the 1920s, at the end of the Felker Yontev Holiday of Nations, which marked the ultimate moment of the season at Camp Boiberik, this march was solemnly sung in the auditorium, while for the only and one time of the year, the white dove of peace was unveiled of the mural on a wooden triangle over the stage by the two most senior campers who pulled the curtains that had hidden the painting all summer. The Schnee Weiße Taube, the white dove, was the central symbol of Boiberik. According to Josh Waletzky, under the dove was the inscription, Die Keile von Israel ist geglichen zu a Taube, a biblical quote meaning the community of Israel is likened unto a dove. It symbolized the camp, it symbolized peace, it symbolized the Jewish people as a whole. This sacred moment, taking place in a secular ritual, can be seen as an imitation of the opening of the Aron HaKodesh, the sacred ark containing the Torah scrolls on Yom Tovim. Its performance reflects a very interesting conception of Jewish secularism developed at Camp Boiberik by its most influential founder and longtime director, Leibu Schlerer, a trained psychologist and educator. Leibu Schlerer was an influential theoretician and one of the founding fathers of the Sholem Aleichem Folk Institute, a network of shules which developed a non-political and non-religious approach to Jewishness. He was born in Warsaw in 1887 and emigrated to the United States around 1909 after a traditional Jewish education and adhesion to the territorialist movement in Poland, which I will talk more about later. Established in 1919 by the Sholem Aleichem Folk Institute in New York, Camp Boiberik was the very first Yiddish secular summer camp in America, to be followed later by many. It took place every summer until 1979 near Rhinebeck, New York. Marsha Gildin, former camper and wonderful theater person, she works with intergenerational theater. In a conversation that we had in April 2014 in the Bronx, described Boiberik as a spiritual center of secular Judaism. She added that, I quote, the peoplehood was expressed in the culture, in the language, in the history, and the complete commitment to educating yourself around that and being in support of the people, end of quote. The Felker Yontev, dearly remembered by former campers as a highlight of the summer, was the celebration of the different peoples and nations of the world that concluded every summer season on the final day and evening of camp. In her book about Yiddish secular education in America, Friedel Friedenreich quotes a former staff member, Friedel Frank, who recalls the festival. Preparations began 3 weeks before the end of the season. Every group became a different nation, learning their national songs. The camp artists began building gateways for each group, and the seamstress began sewing national costumes. The event would start on Friday evening after dinner during the last weekend. The entire camp, dressed in white, marched with their counselors around the constructed gateway until they had completed a full circle. They then marched into the auditorium for the Shabbos program, where each group presented the song of their nation. Parents and guests were invited to attend. So here I would like to introduce a map that I drew during an interview with Josh Waletzky, as we were elaborating about the different spaces of the ritual, from the fields to the hill leading to the auditorium itself, and the dining hall. So he mentioned how the form of the ritual helped the campers know what was their own place in the collectivity according to their age and gender. So, sorry, the map is just rough drawing, but it describes the way boys on one side and girls on the other side were entering and placing themselves in the front of the stage, facing right, so that their profile was in front of the audience, right? And was sung at this moment, I hope I understood well, and they sang at this time Shira Shirim, which was a very solemn moment, and then Lecha Dodi, and I thought maybe you want to sing one of it. Maybe Shira Shirim. I don't know if Josh wants to help. I thought I would make it a little bit more interactive since I have so amazing. Oh, okay. Okay, we were not sure about where were the girls and the boys, I remember in the conversation. Okay, really? Oh, the piano, I have to say I made it up. Thank you. You want to do the other one? Okay. Thank you, Josh. Waletzky, Josh Waletzky. So Friedenreich goes on with her descriptive quote of the festival. I quote, "After the service, everyone went out to the various country areas to socialize. On Saturday evening, immediately after dinner, the nations, dressed in their native costumes, went into the auditorium where they performed dances of their respective countries. Then everyone went back to their gateway and roasted marshmallows." End of quote. The witness then describes Leibuschlerer's speech and the heartbreaking farewell of the campers, which I'm sure you all remember. In this presentation, my aim is to analyze how the songs of the Felker Yontev, all of them in Yiddish, almost, and some of them in Hebrew, express and shape aspects of the political, cultural, and religious identity of the campers. I was astonished by both the complexity and the consistency of this cultural and intellectual construction, located at the crossroad of a very rooted Jewish identity, an American identity of immigrants and their children, and a very local identity of Boiberikaner, envisioning Boiberik itself as a cultural home, all of them converging towards a universalistic and pacifistic ideal that was part of the general zeitgeist of the progressive movements of the aftermath of World War I, when Leibuschlerer started the camp. The various plays of identification induced by the performance of the Felker Yontev, which blended Jewish elements, Yiddish language, biblical quotes, symbols, with external elements, evolved over the years as the historical context shifted. The ritual created an interesting superposition of places, both experienced and imaginary. The context of the aftermath of the First World War raised a set of questions that is very different from the evolution that occurred in American Jewish identity after World War II and the creation of the State of Israel. So I would like to go back to the context of creation of Camp Boiberik. The idea of Felker, of people, that Leibush Lehrer developed and expressed through the pageant can be informed by several ideological trends of the 1910s and 1920s. First, territorialist ideas prevailed at the time of the creation of the Yiddish Sholem Aleichem Folk Institute, Shules network, in 1916, and their claim that national minorities could have autonomous territories. The people represented in the Felker could thus be nations with a state, like French, Italians, Greeks, or national minorities within states, whether fighting for one or not, or indigenous people, for example, Druze or Gypsies, Native Americans, Basques, etc. To write a song for the Boiberikaner, representing a particular people at the Felker Yontev, the music counselor, who was required to be innovative, would collect traditional melodies, translate or adapt a folk song into Yiddish, or pastiche lyrics or music of the folk style, like using a specific scale or mode for Japanese or for Druze. Sometimes some words in the language of the people represented were directly used in the song. For example, you can watch on the Wexler History Project on the Yiddish Book Center website, you can watch a video with Chana Mlotek performing her songs of the French, which is very, very funny, and it goes like sur le pont d'Avignon, and then into Yiddish, Affenbrick, etc. And then it goes into en passant par la Lorraine, Herzer Hageschrei, vive la France, vive la liberté. Some of you know it. Yeah. Thank you. And then does it go into the French cancan, right? Allez, 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 Coumenon, allez, tout mit die Fils. Allez, Coumenon, fun Marseille und fun Paris. So that was the Chana Mlotek's. Someone's still singing. Okay, and then so Josh Waletzky also told me that later he wrote another tune for French with Dans le jardin de mon père. I don't know if you want to show it. Okay. So he basically translated French tune. Dans le jardin de mon père, les arbres sont fleuris. Yeah. In mein Tatensgarten blühen Blumenschein. So go back to the context. The First World War was followed by an international pacifist movement. The peoples represented in the Felker Yontev, who were also potential parties of war, each sang their own song expressing their desire for peace, as a kind of League of Nations. Josh Waletzky told me that in these years, peace pageants were performed in New York public schools. One of the very first documents that you may find if you look at the very first file in the first box of the archives of Camp Boiberik is a 4-page children's journal in Yiddish entitled Der Boiberiker Glock, The Boiberik's Bell. It was published in 1923 by the Children's Republic of Boiberik. Beautifully illustrated, it displays a cracked bell, reminding of the American Liberty Bell, of course, symbol of the American independence and related to the history of abolitionism. The first article on the page is called Cooperation, Cooperatie, and stresses an important principle of the camp. It's followed by an illustration of a tailor's scissor, and on the same page, one can find the illustration of a rooster, at that time the unofficial symbol of the Democratic Party since the last third of the 19th century. So the iconography of this document gives an idea of the political situation of Boiberik in the American context at the moment of its birth, when most of its members were immigrants themselves and spoke Yiddish as a vernacular language. There are many examples of macaronic songs mixing Yiddish and English in the repertoire of Boiberik. The use of songs in summer camps was constant throughout the world of US summer camps, and the process of writing new songs about the camp itself was not specific to Camp Boiberik. It was a way to build a local identity and a sense of belonging. What was special about Boiberik was probably the impact of the pedagogy and thought of Leibushlehrer. First, the expression Children's Republic refers to a trend of pedagogical innovations and experimentations that were implemented both in the United States and in Europe in the 1920s, such as Korczak, Montessori, etc. Leibushlehrer, who studied child psychology and pedagogy, wrote several articles about this topic. He particularly developed original ideas about Jewish secularism, and as Friedenreich writes, I quote, put his ideas into practice in the camp and schools he directed. End of quote. Saul Goodman, in his tribute to Leibushlehrer in the 1965 yearbook dedicated to his memory, characterized Boiberik as a laboratory, acknowledging Lehrer's anti-conformist and pioneer vision of American Jewish secular education. Goodman explains that Lehrer had understood that it was not possible to apply a pre-existing model of education, should it be a non-Jewish American model or a East European Jewish model, to the contemporary context of normalization and secularization of the Jews in the United States. Friedenreich writes that, I quote, opposing mainstream secularists who wanted to reject everything that Jewish religion represented, Lehrer viewed Judaism not only as a religion, but also as a folk culture, stressing tradition and customs. He considered this very important means to link Jews to their collective history and heritage. He understood and agreed that customs and traditions need to be adapted to modernity and to the contemporary environments in which North American Jews found themselves. End of quote. For Saul Goodman, Lehrer was a Jewish survivalist, maintaining a form of traditionalism that was careful to freedom of interpretation and to details that would not copy the old in form and content. Jewish creative continuity, in Leibushlehler's words, required a will on the part of the group to survive. It is in this context that Leibushlehrer invented and introduced the Felker Yontev, which remained a local Boiberik tradition until the late 1970s, and which had a profound impact on those who attended the camp. Leibushlehrer stressed on the importance of the transmission of Jewish identity and of the Yiddish language. Fradel Friedenreich quotes in her book a former Boiberik camper, I quote, I can remember songs as being the powerful glue that made me feel the range of connectedness from being part of my bunk on the one hand and experiencing myself as part of Klal Israel, the Jewish people, on the other. End of quote. The Felker Yontev was a ritual of peace, a musical Yiddish ritual, pageant, explicitly enacting Isaiah's prophetic vision that all nations would live in peace. While most other summer camps had color wars at the end of the summer, Boiberik had a peace festival. 12 new songs were composed every year by the music counselor for the occasion. Each age group would represent Völker von der Welt, people of the world. The older campers, 15-year-old boys and girls, represented the Boiberikaner, and the 14-year-old girls were the Biblische Jiden, but shortened to Yidden. And maybe some of you might recognize themselves. I found that on the Boiberik website, and so the Boiberikaner. Okay. The Boiberikaner represented a new folk, a new people, which was hosting the festival in their land, Boiberik, turned into the cultural home of the campers. Both groups had their song, very likely written by the then music counselor Lazar Weiner between 1925, when the first Felker Yontev occurred, and 1927, when the first version of the pageant songs were edited in the booklet Mir Singen. Maybe you want to sing this song? Thank you. It's much less work for me. Thank you. So these songs, together with the Sholem March that we heard earlier, remain part of the core repertoire sung every year. But the three of them transformed over the years. In fact, I could trace the changes in the songs as presented in the song booklets printed every year, and guess when the version was modified. Between the year 1948 and 1949, with the creation of the State of Israel, the messianic ideal that was expressed through all the years became more explicit. In Friedenmarsch, the changes are in red. I don't know if you can see the red very well. In Friedensmarsch, the Friedenspalast, Palace of Peace, of the earlier version disappear, while the dove transforms into a Neveischer Geist, prophetic spirit, and the phrase "Der Cholem der Alter wird wahr," the old dream comes to life, appears in the song instead of "Mir singen von Sholem und Freud," we're singing of peace and joy. If the camp was explicitly non-partisan, although within the realm of the progressive Yiddish-speaking organizations, the sensibility became generally Zionist, mainstream Jewish American in that sense. The abstract Sholem Hoys, House of Peace, has turned into the hope of a Jewish state in Israel. The reference to Israel yet remains somehow quite an abstract one, referring more to the messianic ideal of peace than to the actual event. I mean, that's maybe something that should be discussed from the experience. In the yearbook of 1965, 1 year after the death of Leibush Lehrer, Joseph Landis recalls a story that the famous Yiddish writer and satirist Moshe Nadir once came to visit Boiberik towards the end of the season and observed the Felker Yontev. I quote, "He was greatly impressed by the pageantry, by the color and variety of the national costumes worn by the children's group, by the native songs and dance, and by the spirit of brotherhood that reigned at this ceremony, at which the senior boys and girls reaffirmed the aspirations of biblical Jews and re-echoed the famous words of Isaiah." Finally, as Joseph Landis tells it, Moshe Nadir turned to Lehrer and said, "It's wonderful, this festival, in which all the peoples of the world gather together as equals." But he added with a mild ironic smile, it seems to me that you've made the Jews a little more equals than the others. End of quote. I would like to conclude on the impact of the songwriting process in Boiberik on the work of a contemporary Yiddish songwriter, who I already mentioned, you already saw, and you already knew anyway. So a filmmaker, former music consul at Boiberik, and very important informant for my research. So Josh Waletzky is an important figure in the Yiddish current music scene, not only as a songwriter, but also as a transmitter of an unbroken chain of tradition, since he was part of the faculty in Yiddish Summer of Weimar last year and will be there again next summer, as well as part of the Yiddish folk song apprenticeship of the New York Council on the Art. So his role as a teacher is also very important. So his album Arriber die Schotten, Crossing the Shadows, in 2001, features several songs about peace. Like, for example, Irland, the song about the Irish conflict. And his song Ved Verzeyen Sholem, We Will Sow Peace. We Will Sow Peace? So, thank you. Was recorded on clarinetist Michael Winograd's beautiful album Storm Game, released in 2012, with Winograd's adaptation of a traditional tune from the Beregovsky collection. So my interest as a researcher is to follow the threads of continuity in the current creation in Yiddish, which is how I got interested in Boiberik, while looking at Josh Waletzky's and Michael Winograd's works. What is interesting in the song Vervet Zeyn Sholem is that Josh Waletzky continues to use the symbols and biblical references, for example, with the image Leibun Lamp, the match between the lion and the lamb, and with an expression like Shatchenen dem Shidduch. So he's making the match. So his discourse on peace, his if I may say, a genuine discourse of insider as a Jewish Yiddish songwriter. And I'm very honored that Josh Waletzky offered me, and to all of us, the very special treat of performing his original song, Vervet Zeyn Sholem.
It's a real honor for me to be part of this presentation. This song came from, I'll just say a couple of words briefly. It's certainly the song has its deepest roots in Boiberik. There's no question about that. It's a song about peace. It's a Felker Yontev song. It really, the immediate prompt to write the song was meeting a woman who is active in an organization which tries to promote better relations between Jews and Arabs in the Middle East by gathering ancient grains, seeds, and sharing that among those communities. And that's where the first line comes from, Vervet Zeyn Sholem, in der eingebackener Erd. And the end of the song comes from a kind of a greeting card sensibility I once read, which I liked, which is, there is no road to peace. Peace is the road. And so that I kind of incorporated at the end of the song. And in between, there's Yeshaya, who else? And it was Michael Winograd that asked me to write words to a tune which he had adapted from Berezovsky, and I added some part to it as well. So it goes like this. Wer wird sehen Scholem in der eingebackene Herd? Wer wird schmieden Ackereisen sind von dem heldischen Schwert? Wer besorgen wird mit Wasser als nicht docken Tropfen teuer? Wer wird euch sitten die Twoe mit der Geul am Heustreu? Und wer wird schatchen an dem Schiddach zwischen Leib und Lamm? Und reinigen von Wunden dem meuredigen Samm? Jeden Sonnenvergang noch weit von Schneidgesang, wer sich losen in dem Weg von Scholem, aheim, 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 da-dim, da-i-da-i-da-i-dam, da-i-da-dam-di, da-dam, da-i-da-di-dam. Jeden Sonnenvergang noch weit von Schneidgesang, wer sich losen in dem Weg von Scholem, aheim, aheim, aheim. Du wirst sehen Scholem in der eingebackene Herd. Ich will schmieden Ackereisens von dem heldischen Schwert. Der Schochen wird gefinnen, Wasser chotsch, nicht docken Tropfen teu. Der Säune teu sitten die Twoe mit der Geulem oi streu. Und mir ne Schatchen an dem Schiddach zwischen Leib und Lamm und reinigen von Wunden dem meuredigen Samm. Jeden Sonnenvergang noch weit von Schneidgesang, mir sich losen in dem Weg von Scholem, aheim, 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 da-dim, da-i-da-i-da-i-dam, da-i-da-dam-di, da-dam, da-i-da-di-dam. Jeden Sonnenvergang noch weit von Schneidgesang, mir sich losen in dem Weg von Scholem, aheim, aheim, aheim.
Thank you, Josh Waletzky. I think it's a very important song, and it grew out of Boiberik. So that's, yeah, I think it's a song that's worth spreading around now, and so I will, and also. Yeah, so my research is actually to do this ethnographic fieldwork and talk to songwriters and understand where their creativity comes from. So thank you again to the YIVO for giving me this amazing opportunity to research Boiberik Archive, and thank you again to Ruth Kremen, who founded this amazing fellowship, Joseph Kremen Fellowship. Thank you. I guess we have time for questions, but I also want to ask you some questions since I'm still on the field work, let's say, today. So many of you are here. So just, I just want to open the, But I'm curious about how Boiberik and the experience of Boiberik impacted your own work and your own inspiration later on. So just, if you want to ask a question and say something about this too, it would be interesting for me. Thank you.
If anyone wants to respond to that or ask a question.
I want to thank you. Is it on? I want to thank you because I'd not realized what Lebenslehre meant to me until you started. I should tell you that I am now retired but have been a lawyer and went to law school because I thought I had to save the world. Now that's an impossible thing for one human being to do, but it all started there and I blame Lebenslehre.
Thank you.
I want to speak about the using countries as about the nationalism. I know they qualify it by the minorities within the nation and indigenous peoples. If it were a camp, I know different camps had different political orientations. If the camp were a more left-wing camp, would it be safe to say or fair to say they would not have used that element, the nationalism of portraying and exalting the countries themselves, if it were a different political orientation?
I'm not sure to see exactly what you mean, but I guess that this was a lot. It has a lot to do with the context of the post-First World War, and also some kind of some kinds of universalism that was part of the Jewish that was carried on by Jewish European immigrants, with a certain idea of nations. And it was not exactly countries that were represented at the Felker Yontev, right? It was more about peoplehood. And in the interview I did with Marsha and David Gildin really stressed on that, that it was not about nationalism, but more about peoplehood. But still, the way it all got elaborated after in the late 10s and early 20s, I think, had to do with the context of the League of Nations and the need for the nations to talk at a table and make peace. Yeah.
Was the political and environmental situation at the camp one that encouraged a dialogue, or more than a dialogue, among the different people who went to the camp? Were there different political viewpoints that were mentioned throughout the night, so to speak?
Well, I saw from the archive that there were some correspondence with ICOR, which was a territorialist organization. So I know that they were at the very beginning. Then I'm not so sure there was such a dialogue between, let's say, Boiberik and the communist camps or the Bundist. But maybe you can contradict me, but I see people kind of saying there was not so much of a dialogue, right? Oh yeah, there was sport. Yeah, that's right. There was a sports. Right. Between Boiberik and Kinderland, which was the communist camp. Right. Kinderland. Oh, what did I say? Okay, sorry. Kinderwelt, Kindering. Yeah, all of them were. Yeah, so after Leibuschlehrer created Boiberik, there was plenty of Yiddish-speaking summer camps, but more political. Actually, Boiberik was meant to be not political, apolitical, right?
Yeah, the competition was with Arbiter Ring, Circle Camp. Arbiter Ring. I'd like to pay some attention to the enormous amount of creativity that went into each Felker Yontev every year. During my time, Vladimir Heifetz was the music counselor, and from my memory is he wrote every one of the songs, and he wrote a fresh set of songs every year. There was also a dance counselor who created dances that tried to represent her notion of what each nation was like. And then there were the art counselors who made those enormous flats that showed up in the scene you had. There must have been, 15 or 20 of them. And my memory is that the last half of the summer was devoted to that. They hired 2 seamstresses to come just to make the costumes. And there was an enormous effort and a lot of creativity that went into it as well.
Thank you.
And I should mention that when I was a Mittler, I hit in the winning run. For the first time, we beat Circle in 12 years.
What, sir? I didn't get
that. I was in Boiberik from 53 to 62, and I do remember the Felker, and it really affected my life. I remember the women in the Natzimmer. I could not believe how they were making all those costumes, and we'd go in and we'd be measured, and then it would be all finished, and we'd have a costume, and it had your name on it, and it was all set to go. And of course,
amazing.
Yeah, of course, all of the songs and the all of the traditions and Felker Yontev, but also Tish B'Av was also celebrated there, and I do remember, unfortunately, I was there, as I said, from 53 to 62. I remember several campers had to run out because they had vivid memories of losing relatives in the Holocaust, and it was a very sad time, and there was black all over the camp. We had, black cloth and so forth.
Yeah, this is actually very interesting because I focused here on the Felker Yontev, but it was one of several rituals that Leibuschlehrer introduced in the camp and transformed and reinvented in some ways. And Masha Gildin pointed out to me that he was also a pioneer in that sense that he introduced Holocaust commemoration at the moment of Tisha B'Av, which was not a link that was obviously made elsewhere, and he developed some pedagogy around Holocaust commemoration. Yeah.
Hi, Leah brought me here day before yesterday, and I really knew nothing about the topic, but what really strikes me is I'm also an ethnographer, and I'm writing about my own community, Sunnyside Gardens in Queens, which it sounds to me, and I don't know anything about this, but perhaps we can talk, or some of us can talk, that it emanated out of this communitarian socialist movement that really got, it wasn't superseded because it was after, the Sholem Aleichem houses and the communist and socialist housing in New York City, where this experiment was the Regional Planning Association of America, partially led by Louis Mumford, who did have a Jewish father but did not acknowledge his Judaism really, but it really seems to reflect this desire for what they considered folk and what they considered a way for people, in this case, of different ethnicities to kind of shed very stark political ideologies and instead have a more grass-level communitarian socialism that would arise out of the informal interaction of people from different backgrounds. So this is a piece that is so missing from my neighborhood and analysis that I'm so interested in, and I really want to thank you because it's but I think there might be commonalities.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
you.
about urban innovations, I mean, I think the center for the is the South Bronx, is the Bronx, like Bainbridge Avenue, and which was called Bainbridgevke, and Bele Scherter Gottesman, who also is was a songwriter. She wrote a beautiful song. Miriam Chaye-Siegel was a young songwriter and was also a fellow here at YIVO a couple years ago, I think. She wrote a beautiful song about New York, and she speaks about Bainbridgevke. And she studied a lot with Bele Scherter Gottesman, who was part of this territorialist surrounding. And there was really a territorialist project around there, and also housings were built, like Sholem Aleichem. Yeah, so. Yeah.
One aspect of Felker Yontev that hasn't been mentioned is formations. When you marched in, I remember working, and I was a counselor at Boiberik for 4 years. I was assistant head counselor there. And I remember working in formations, and I have a picture. I don't remember too much of it, but I think we were Arabs at that time with long gowns and the headdresses and all. And we had to practice marching in for Felker Yontev on the big field.
As the parent of 2 Boiberikanas, I have to say that it was such a precious experience that still stays with them till today. And it amazes me. I went to a commercial camp, and I have no interest in remembering it, but this is a part of their lives. And it's you can't explain to anybody what it was, but it was a precious jewel that they carry with them.
I think an important part of the entire experience at Boiberik, but particularly of the Felker Yontev and Tisha B'Av, was that the educational objectives of the people who founded the camp. So many of the songs, although they used folk motifs truly, used Yiddish poetry that was the poetry that was written either in Poland or in New York already, and a lot of the songs that we knew that were really hardly at all appropriate for 7, 8, 9-year-old children, about blood soaking the earth, and I mean it was quite extraordinary. When I think back, and I know all those songs are part of my whole memory bank, that this was an attempt to integrate what was fun and exciting and wonderfully communal for children with the heritage that we had, which was the American Yiddish culture, which was part of going to shul, and it was also part of going to Boiberik. A lot of the children who were at camp were also children who went to the folk shulas, and their parents were folkverwalter. They were the ones who ran the shulas, and they sent their children there in the summer to learn more and to speak Yiddish and to learn Yiddish, which got eventually distilled into Yiddish English, and then was English at the end. A sviva, right, a community, right.
I'm Mark Levitt. I'm sorry I was late. But did you ask at any one point for everyone who went to Boiberik to raise their hands just to see that?
That's a good idea.
Can we just do that? Everyone who went to Boiberik raised their hands? There we go. Great. Okay. So I was in the Kinderheim in 1955 and stayed there through 1961. My father and uncle Joseph and Sam Levitt were there in the late 20s. and I had several cousins there also. And obviously it was wonderful musically. No one ever accused me of having inhibitions, so I was always performing and dancing and stuff like that. And what I remember, and this is a good follow-up to what you said, in terms of some of the darker, difficult issues, I think my first exposure to poverty and to hunger was a song that I was taught about the Wise Men of Helm. Can you indulge me 20 seconds? Potatoes on Monday, potatoes on Tuesday, on Wednesday, you guessed it, potatoes we eat. On Thursday and Friday, potatoes, and then potato pudding is our Sabbath treat. We're so full of starch that our stomachs all holler. Each one is stiff as a newly washed collar. Potatoes, potatoes. We're sick of potatoes. We're sick of potatoes. We want some meat. And, when you sing that when you're 8, and then you think about, gosh, there are people in the world who are hungry, and it's not that it's funny, but there's a way that children can relate to that. And so, the Friday night dancing on the lawn all dressed in white with music through the loudspeakers, and then going in and hearing not prayers and not, ceremony, but hearing a story with a moral by Peretz or by Shalom Aleichem. This is where my values came from.
I don't know. I'm enjoying a lot people telling their stories.
I went to Boiberik from 1962 to 1970, and I came from a completely secular background, and I was dragged there by, actually, my friend Ina's mother. And music was so important at the camp, and I learned all the Yiddish songs, and I'd come home and sing them to my father, and he'd say, "But what do they mean?" I had no idea what they meant, but they were just, it was just such an amazing experience and I think that I can speak for a lot of people that are here today, that stayed in our hearts to such a degree that that is almost annoying to other people. Actually, I have a friend in the back who just happens to be here, and I know she knows about Boiberik because everybody who knows me knows about what a big part of my heart it was. And I wasn't a particularly good camper. I never came close to the Golden Book or anything like that. But it shaped my whole life, and it's just in me and with me, and I think that's true of everybody. And I have to say that Josh, when I started camp, Chana Mlotek was the music counselor, and then later Josh became the music counselor. And the things that, the stuff that they created, we still sing them today. We know all the words to all the songs. It's really an amazing legacy. And just one last memory I have, because when I was 8 years old, we would have mid-season, which was the mid-season festival, and it would be on all these kind of things which I knew nothing about because there was nothing Jewish in my family, nothing. And so I remember my first year of camp, they dressed us in these brown garbs with the Jewish star on our chest, and we were like the Jews that were branded in Germany. And we were 8 years old. I knew nothing about the Holocaust, but I always remember that we played these children and we sang I don't remember the songs, but they taught us songs, and that kind of thing just stayed with me forever. That's what they did. That's what the memory and the history that they brought to these little children. Boiberik is Lebanon.
Thank you. Maybe we could go for one or two more, and then maybe finish with a song.
Thank you. In all the years that I have known Mark Levitt, I never knew that you went to Boiberik. I'm calling out because I am here representing my two daughters. And when I spoke to Gail when we first came in, I said, is anybody here the age of about 55 or 59? And Gail told me that she was in the bunk below my younger daughter, Judy Wilner. So please wait there, because I have to tell Judy every single thing. And I love you all. I love you all.
Okay, yeah, maybe I would like to thank you all very much for sharing these wonderful stories. And please feel free to write to me if you have stories to share. My email is written here. And we can end with a song. I picked it up, and Josh is willing to lead us. Oh, you have another pick?
I just want to mention for all the Boiberikana that there is a reunion scheduled for May 15th at Boiberik, now currently known as the Omega Institute.
Oh, yeah, and since we're doing an announcement on Sunday, so here at 2 p.m., I will perform with Eléonore Biezunski and Pete Wachewski, French Yiddish program, but also we're going to show a preview of an adaptation of Aaron Zeitlin's poem, Esoterische Poem, which we're working on. That's a work in process, but I think that Aaron Zeitlin was also somehow close to Boiberik, so please come on Sunday. And then we can leave.
If I can just slip in a little promotional announcement. This Wednesday at the 14th Street Y, is it Wednesday? Yes. Wednesday, April 1st. I'm going to be part of a program, and we're going to present a 20-minute excerpt from a work in progress based on a folktale called Der letzte Dybbuk, The Last Dybbuk. And if it's also going to be on a program with a wonderful filmmaker who's making a film that you should all know about. Anyway, I'll post this on the Boiberik list, and if anyone is around and interested, there is a Boiberik mailing list, a discussion list, and also a web page on Facebook. So if you what? Pardon me? What time? It's at 7:30. No. I'm sorry. It's 6:30 on Wednesday at the 14th Street Y. You know what? If anyone is not on one of those lists, yes, Julie. Okay. Yes, you can sign up. I'm just going to relay. Yes, I think that's very apt. We should acknowledge Leibush Lehrer's founding of the camp. Thank you.